Thanks very much, everybody, for joining. Gentleman to my left, he might be to your right. I'm not sure where he is in the image. So I'd like to introduce you Richard Youngman, who's the Managing Director of Sicon. My name's Steve Gemmer. I'm the Sales Manager here. So between us, we're going to be delivering the presentation. I'm actually going to turn my camera off just for a second so I can show the slides, and then we'll run through the agenda.
And I will do the same.
Perfect.
Which I think just makes the presentation a little easier for you guys to see.
Yes. So if I click just on there, hopefully, Richard, can you see the slide change?
Yeah.
It's perfect. So yeah, just in terms of an agenda today, it's a bit of a packed one. So there's going to be some PowerPoint, as there always is, just to set the scene. But actually, halfway down, you'll see there's a product overview. We're going to do a live demonstration, which is always a risky business, but we're going to do that just to show you just some of the elements, what it looks like, how it feels as well. As we go through. So we'll start off, with Sage 200 as your ERP solutions there, talk a bit about the manufacturing modules and the type of areas that we cover, into the product overview, and then we'll finish off with the commercials. And actually, it's an interesting one, Richard, wasn't it? We've saved Who Was Sicon to the end.
Yeah, and we thought we'd just mix it up a bit. Normally people start with that, but we'll explain who we are a little bit more towards the end, just for a change.
Yeah, why not? So I suppose, yeah, just to start, it's just a little illustration. So probably a lot of you, this is the setup at the moment. You might have other sort of add-ons in there, but Sage 200 is the core with your financials and commercials, with Sage Manufacturing and Sage BOM, and then potentially project accounting. But we've left that slightly disconnected because
it is
project accounting is in there.
It's slightly disconnected, isn't it?
Yeah, I think
it's sort of being joined up in terms of the manufacturing software. There's always been this slight sort of disconnect between the two of them. So you'll see from the next slide that Steve's got, the part of what we're going to be explaining today is that we've also got a projects module, but that ties in fully with our manufacturing. So if you're running a wider project where you want to capture other costs, whether that's installation, transport, third-party people that are billing you for certain parts of the project, they can be captured separately, and you can manage those projects separately as part of the whole the manufacturing process within it.
Yeah, and I think what we wanted to illustrate there is it's more integrated, isn't it? Than you are at the moment. Very much. Yes, it's a change of direction, but it is fully integrated. And then the next slide there, we've got the core Sicon manufacturing solution, and we'll explain the portfolio in a moment. Then you've got some other optional modules, so the barcoding and warehousing and shop floor, but again, fully integrated. There's no, what's the word I'm looking for? You're not having to make sacrifices in terms of some of that joined up. It's using the single database, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, no, this will sound very strange, but the Sicon manufacturing module is more of a Sage 200 module than the Sage one. Okay, so just to explain, that must sound really peculiar, but the Sage manufacturing module was bought in originally. It was a product called Promise that was running with Sage 50 manufacturing, and that product was then kind of upscaled a little bit and basically just joined to Sage 200. But fundamentally, it was a separate product, so it's never had the same kind of framework, amendability, structure, all those sorts of things as the rest of 200. And whilst it worked in that environment, the two are very distinctly separate products under the bonnet. Whereas our manufacturing, because we built that entirely within the Sage 200 environment, effectively we write our code in the same way that Sage do. So it's in an odd way, it is more of a Sage solution than the Sage's solution. But that's the way we've written all of our modules. So everything stays within that single database. Everything becomes much easier to join up.
Yeah. So, Rich, do you want to explain the options with regards to the manufacturing suite and those options? So, what are the modules?
Yeah, so originally when we were chatting with Sage about what we had to offer, it was really, they were trying to just replace that manufacturing piece. But I said, well, that's fine. That's works orders, material planning, or capacity planning if you need that element of it as well. But really, when we talk to manufacturers, there's a number of other things they usually need. Sometimes it's very basic manufacturing. So there's a kitting element as opposed to a works order element. For certain types, there's more project-related aspects to it, as I've already alluded to. But then also, for the majority of those manufacturing clients, we also see demand for shop floor data capture and certainly barcoding and warehousing to help accuracy, streamline performance, that type of stuff are always a big requirement. So what we've done is we've included all of those, if you like, in the offering that kind of makes up the manufacturing modules that that we're working with Sage on.
I think as well, it's the slight difference there. We've got at the top the manufacturing suite. So for customers who need all of the 4 modules just listed below that, or 3 of the 4 modules, it makes sense to go for the suite itself. But there is flexibility, isn't there, for customers who just need works orders or just need works orders and material planning?
Absolutely, yeah, and you know, they can just buy one to get them started, and later on they can move on and add the other modules, and it's very easy just to add them on as you go.
Yeah, and I think the projects one's an interesting one, which we'll pause for a moment, because on the next couple of slides we're going to talk about the types of manufacturing clients that we cover, and I think the projects is an interesting one, isn't it, when we get to the bespoke side of things.
Definitely,
but,
yeah.
I mean, the first one we've got is discrete production, and I suppose it depends on how you label it, but you know, this was, you know, for yourself, wanted to explain that we can cover a multitude of areas, isn't it, Richard?
Yeah, there's certain people try and compartmentalize manufacturing. I mean, it doesn't always fit very well, does it? But you've got people who make the same thing repetitively over and over and over again, from a bill of material, from a set of components, and then make a finished item. So that's your kind of discrete manufacturing. So you know, you create a works order, you make that works order, you complete them into stock. You can either do that obviously in the works order, or you can backflush them. Barcoding also allows you to backflush them if you want to do that from within the production area. So that's your kind of classic discrete multi-level bill of material becomes a multi-level works order, etc., etc. So you know, straightforward stuff. Continuous production is a little more interesting, because this is where you are constantly building and constantly adding in components into a production line. So I suppose the baked bean tin is a good example, isn't it? That production line runs pretty much indefinitely. Product comes out the other end. We've got one client with they're making toilet rolls, but topical. Maybe not as topical as it was a year ago, but topical. So there's paper going in, 3-ply, 2-ply, whatever it is on the relevant lines, and the toilet rolls coming out the other end. So that's your sort of continuous production process.
I think the interesting one on that, Rich, is I didn't realise this, but it falls under the same legislation as food. So everything has to be batch coded, time stamped as well, which I think was always an interesting one in that sector.
For the toilet rolls?
Yeah, absolutely.
You ever try to find a batch?
Yeah, you just have to enroll the cardboard tube. But anyway, enough of our knowledge of that particular sector. So the bespoke one, that was the one I was alluding to earlier, isn't it? Where it's actually thinking of using the modules in a slightly different way.
It is. So you know, we have a client, and they did build the Isle of Wight chain ferry in the last couple of years. So basically, they work entirely. So they're a manufacturing company. Obviously, they're building the ships, vessels, that type of thing. But the whole thing is built in a project. They have not a single bomb. They don't use works orders. Everything is designed in a structure in our projects as a phase stage and activity. In there, you can build up operations that have material requirements on them as well, and labor requirements on them. So effectively a set of tasks that have to happen to build that ferry over time. So it works much the same as a works order would, but you just build it out in a slightly different way as a project, instead of as a bomb that you're going to build over and over again, because everything they do is bespoke.
And then the final type is well, we called it hybrid, isn't it? Which is, and it's a surprise in the number that we come across where, you know, they're a combination of the above, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, some of those points we've alluded to, but there are an awful lot of people who do a bit of both. You know, there might be that they do some manufacturing of parts, and then those parts get included into a bigger project. So there's a bespoke element to what they're doing, but some standard product builds which can come from works orders within that as well. So it just depends how they want to work. But however it is, the ultimate bit where you're booking time and storing your material requirement is under what we refer to as an operation. So whether it's in a project or whether it's in a works order, makes no difference to us. MRP is going to look at that, capacity plan is going to look at that, and they all get incorporated together.
I think for me, it's the fourth of the kind of sub bullet points down there as well. You know, by tying projects into this, the clients who, you know, it might be a wider project, perhaps they're manufacturing items for a new hotel build or something like that. It's not just the manufacturer, so they'll have the works order for the kind of discrete production elements, but then being able to tie that all into a central product as they've got installation teams and expenses as well, so you can actually look at the overall profitability.
Yeah, and some of the clients that we have, I mean, they're building products that are maybe £200,000-300,000, and then they've got to send it out to the Far East somewhere or to America where it has to be commissioned. So there's shipping, there's obviously all the guys then have to go out and do the commissioning, and that needs to be tracked as a project. So they can use projects not only to capture those costs, but to manage who's going where and when, and schedule that time in as well.
Perfect. So we thought we'd drop in a couple of example customers. This one at the moment is very, very topical for us. It's a case study that we've worked with Sage and Redtronic. But Richard, what do Redtronic do?
I was going to use their posh one, audio and visual warning lights. They make the flashing lights that go on top of police cars, ambulances, fire service, emergency vehicles. That's what they make. Really nice bunch. I'm actually talking to them later on today. We've just done an upgrade for them. We're going to go through some new bits and pieces with them. But the one standout from Steve, that's Steve on the picture there, the one standout for him, and we talked about this on another similar webinar a while ago, is he said their lead time was 5 to 6 weeks out. And that was a hopeful lead time for any new orders coming in. And he has openly said, and I'm sure he would say it again if we had him here now, they've got their lead time down to about 5 days guaranteed. Quite often it's less than that. And he puts that down entirely to our MRP and the way we manage the stock in the system. Visibility of works order is always a big thing as well, to see exactly what's going on and where. So not only is he a lovely man for saying nice things about us, he genuinely has made excellent use of our products in the business. He's expanded that out. He's put in service, he's put in CRM, he's put in barcoding, the whole lot. Doesn't seem to stop. Agriline is another one. They're big distributor of tractor parts, as it says on the on their logo. But they also manufacture engines and rebuild engines as well, and do repairs on engines. So they've got a fairly big manufacturing section to the business as well. So again, really nice organisation. We started off life with them with barcoding. They do sort of 800 parcels a day. Another seminar with them tomorrow on another session, just talking about how they managed to do a 40% increase in growth last year. And some of the points that came out of that were around, particularly about the barcoding use to speed things up, and visibility and dashboards, and all sorts of bits and pieces that we've helped them with.
And then we thought we'd just drop in the last one again, just some of the sectors. I mean, hopefully you're getting an idea that the solution, it's flexible. We've got a lot of customers, you can see in those verticals there, may or may not fit some of the specifics for yourselves, and of course that's where
we could have gone on, couldn't we? That list could have gone on and on, but we're trying to, there's a broad one. The toilet rolls obviously was a topical, funny one at the bottom there, but it's they're really, I wouldn't say we specialize in any particular sector, because we have that mix of the projects and the standard manufacturing modules. It really makes it an incredibly flexible solution. So
the bit that you've all been waiting for now is just moving over to a product overview. Now, I think the key thing here is we're going to show some of the bells and whistles. Of course, it's not it'd be great if we could tailor and for everybody, but we're going to touch on some of the elements. Hopefully you'll get a feel for what we've got. And I'd certainly recommend a one-to-one demonstration. But what we're going to do, I'm going to flip over to this screen, and
this is quite an unusual thing. I mean, a lot of people won't jump into a live demonstration when they are doing a presentation like this, because it's all a little bit scary, but we love this stuff. we spend our days doing demonstrations of our software to people. So we thought we would actually show you what it looks like, how it appears within Sage, some of the expanded elements of that as well. So Steve's going to drive, and I'll just sort of chip in along the way.
No, absolutely. So yeah, Sage 200. Now, the first part really is just static data. So I think the first part is always in stock. So your standard stock items that you're going to have. So if I just filter down for my MSFG, so one of the members of the team have actually we got a bomb that's instant coffee, which I thought was quite different, so I thought I'd use that one for today. But again, just using the standard Sage stock item itself, so all the things that you'd expect. So we're not reinventing the wheel, and also it makes the the implementation a bit quicker, doesn't it, Richard? Although we'll cover that off a little bit later.
Yeah, I suppose just looking at that screen there at the moment, then you know, there's already a few things that have, in fact, there's quite a lot of tabs across the top that have appeared. So there's a Sicon one, there's a CRM task, CRM cases. Those modules are those elements are ours. We've added those into the Sage stock item. There's one down the bottom as well, which is the inspection required when receiving purchase orders. So this is what we like about 200, is it makes it very amendable. It makes it a really good user experience. And as I say, we're writing our modules in the same way that Sage write theirs, but it you know, makes it easy to follow and easy to understand. So essentially, you're not working on manufacturing outside of Sage. We are fully inside. I know we keep talking about that, but to show you it, I think helps.
Yeah, and it's things like you know, your minimum stock levels as you'd be using at the moment, Sage's bins, which we've tweaked, you know, to enhance even further for replenishment, for barcoding. For your suppliers, obviously this is a built item, but we'd always use your preferred supplier. Things in there in terms of lead time, so working backwards, all the aspects you'd expect. And you know, often when we do these demonstrations, and I loved it, I did one a couple of weeks ago, and the person there said, I've already got that. Now, I worked in the payroll sector for nearly 10 years, and a payroll product has to, you know, regardless of whether you spend 50 pence or whether you spend £50,000, it's still got to pay people, do the deductions, etc., do your return. It's just how it goes about it. So as we got through the demonstration, and as you'll see, it's just little things that we've worked and evolved working with those different customers over the years that just make, in our opinion and our customers' opinions, it far more flexible to use than possibly what you've got at the moment. Now, you'll also have a Sicon tab, so things in there such as some defaults, minimum, maximum batch sizes as well for your works order. So I'm not going to labour too much on there. So if we come then into your bill of materials, so we use Sage's bill of materials, and I think the idea was we could have written our own, but it's pretty good for what we need to do, isn't it?
Sage bill of materials is really a perfectly adequate module. In fact, it's more than adequate. It's a good module. It does, you know, full version control. Its cost roll-ups are good. You know, we've enhanced it now in certain places. So within the operations, we've done some extensions in there. One of the recent ones is you can now put attachments and things on there for when we're doing shop floor data capture. So you can actually have media. So you can have photos to show people what they're doing while they're doing an operation, or even watch a video for it. So this we've enhanced things where we need to make it a little better,
but still using the basics. So there's your static data, and I'm sure everybody recognizes that. Now, there's a number of different ways of being able to create a works order. I mean, it's simplest, guys. You simply come into works order processing, and in fact, you wouldn't even know this was a Sicon module. You know, that's how integrated it is. Other than that was a Sicon project, you know, the rest of them, they don't. But just to create a works order, you would just come in, create works order. It could be an empty works order if you want, perhaps it's proof of concept, or just pick your bomb and create it. The second option is, as I'm just about to do, put on a sales order. And so we'll put on a brand new order. And we'll pick good old Cute and Cozy today. So one of our customers, and I don't know, the customer wants it for Tuesday. Let's just pick Tuesday, for example. So we'll
just looking at that screen, Steve, if people are familiar with Sage 200, they're going to be looking at that thinking, blimey, there's an awful lot of extra tabs on there. Now, we've got an environment here that's got a lot of our modules installed. So there's some stuff on there for retentions, there's cash flow, there's CRM, there's all sorts of bits. So don't assume they're there by default. We could have trimmed it down a little bit, so hopefully it's not make it look overly fussy on the screen.
Yeah. So I'm going to make 500. I haven't got any in stock. So, you know, all the standard items that you'd expect. Now, this is an interesting one. So when we get onto the material planning, you can add a manual forecast, and this is great for customers who you know, their sales team are talking to retail outlets or whatever that would be, but you haven't yet got the order, but you might have a longer lead time, so you need to take that into consideration. So what we've got here is it's not for that is it for that specific customer, but in this instance what we've got is an order around similar date now, the 25th, 28th, on there as a forecast, and it's just asking me, do I want to reduce the balance? So it's not forcing you to, but it's just saying, actually, do you want to reduce the balance? So when we run MRP, it's just going to be including 2,000 instead of the 500. I'm going to say no, because I'm quite happy with that. The other option we've got on this screen is this calculate button. So I've got it switched on. So what that's doing is that's looking at all of the components inside of the sub-assemblies, and essentially kind of exploding it in the background, analyzing the stock items and just saying, have we got enough stock coverage to be able to make this? Or if we haven't got enough stock, based on the lead times, you know, if we order, I think I've got a couple of items in there which are same day delivery, then yeah, you could make it today if you want to. So we haven't got any problems with that. But it would go red if, say, it was a 10-week lead time, you haven't got the stock items. So it just gives you an idea from the stock perspective when you could get that in. So it's great for a salesperson.
It is really helpful. Yeah, someone putting a sales order or a quote, someone's trying to work out, well, when can I actually make it? So it will on very complex bill of materials, it effectively explodes it out on the fly, all the sub-assemblies, does a quick analysis of all of the components that are required, checks what's in stock at that particular point in time when it's required, to then tell you, you know, when you can next make it.
Yes, no, absolutely. Now, so I'm just getting a pen so I can write this one down so I can easily find it. So 5139 is our sales order. Now, I want you to focus on that because that's quite important. So one of the first options we got is a workflow. So the system's telling us here that we haven't got any stock, so we need to make a works order. And because I've got the project integration, it's saying, do you want to create a job or a project? So I'm going to say yes. Now, again, these are options. I've got it set up just for demonstration so it pops up. So we've got some options here. So for the sub-assembly, if we had stock, we could just say we're going to use some from stock. If we've got an existing sub-assembly on there, which is going to be adding some in stock, or any purchase orders if we're buying in. So at this stage, I need to create the sub-assembly. So that's absolutely fine. And what the system's now going off and doing is that's now generated a works order and a project. So actually, what does that look like in reality? So if I go back into my sales order, Richard mentioned the tabs just across the top. One of those, which I'll have, would be the works orders. So again, it's giving visibility to your sales team. But if you look at the numbering, we actually number the works order the same as the sales order, and then 001 because it's line number 1. But actually from the status, so as we allocate, as we issue, as we book, from the sales perspective, we can see that. We've also got the manual areas, so you can set up different routing areas and update those. So again,
yeah, it helps the salespeople. Yeah, it deals with that inquiry, doesn't it? Because you can see, yes, it's fully allocated, or yes, it's, you know, it's now being fully issued. So it's now then tracking that through production, and if you've got the areas set up accordingly as the operations get completed, the areas progress, so people can very easily see where that is and give an update.
Now, the other way of creating works orders, so we've got some customers where they don't want the salespeople in control of generating those. So you've actually got this particular screen as well. So production can pick a date range. Here's a list of the sales orders where we need to manufacture something, and I can simply tick and then create selected works orders that way as well. So it's just another way of controlling it. And the final, which we'll see later, is when we run material planning, then we can do it that way. So let's just have a quick look at our list of works orders. So if I come into the process works order screen, again, it's just giving me a date range 1 month back, 1 month forwards. So just in case anything's overdue. And there's a list of those items in there, the generated date and when we should start it. So again, we always work backwards from when the customer requires it. But this, I think, is always quite nice. So there's the one that I just generated, but we give you a visual. There's the sub-assembly, so you can see the status of the sub-assembly within there and the details. And I think, again, it's just that nice visibility from that perspective. But if I just edit, as you'd expect, we've just taken a snapshot of what's inside of that bill of materials and presented it in this particular screen. So we've got our quantities, obviously multiplied by the quantities we require. And in this particular screen, we can see our free stock. So actually, we haven't got enough of anything, so we're going to have to buy those items in. We also have the option to be able to add non-stock in. So, you know, it could be bubble wrap or something which you don't really want to stock. And the thing I always like about that is you can pick your supplier and we can generate a purchase order for that as well, and then roll the costs up into the costing elements. So from the component side of things, we're trying to use some logic. So at the moment it's using average buying price just to give us an estimate. But of course, as we consume that, it's going to give us then our issued cost as we flow that through. We then explode the operations. So we saw those earlier, but again, just giving us visibility of those operations. And as we'll see shortly with the shop floor, is actually being able to perhaps I'm taking a break or complete there, see where we are in that particular process, but also then visibility from our labor and or machine time, again, the estimate on what we've actually consumed.
So, so anyone who's got the bill of materials set up already, if you raise a works order, having installed our modules, it will just pull all that information through directly from what's already configured.
Yeah. Now I'm actually going to drill down to the sub-assembly from within this particular screen. So there's our sub-assembly, but this one, from an operation perspective, we actually set it up as being a subcontract operation. So just to show you how we handle the subcontract. Now, I think it's fair to say, Rich, some customers, because of the way they've always done it, just have it as a stock item. But what this does is this allows us to be able to generate a purchase order, but also track this particular item. So from here, I can edit, and if I select that line there, I can actually allocate the stock. So at the moment, we're just allocating, I can generate a purchase order out to our supplier. So when do I need that in by? Well, actually, I want that in by Friday. And if I save and generate a purchase order, that's now dropped me a purchase order into purchase order processing, and that's ready to go. What we're also able to do then is actually dispatch the stock item. So this was designed for a client in Northern Ireland with fence posts, wasn't it, originally, who they would send all of these fence posts out for powder coating or whatever the finish was. But they had no way of being able to track, because they wouldn't wait for them all to be finished before they came back. So they had no way of tracking what they sent
about
out.
20 on a vehicle at a time. So there would be many vehicles for a lot of the sites that would just be backwards and forwards with posts and bolts and things as they were going. So yeah, they could just track the dispatch out. So really, they're whilst we're saying that we are allocating and dispatching a product, it's not really doing anything in stock. It's a way of us just tracking what they are wanting to send and put on a dispatch note to send out. Really, the purchase order is covering that subcontract operation, which is the galvanizing or the powder coating of the products.
But also being able to track what batch you've sent out as well. Again, depending on how you've got your settings in Sage. So in terms of this, what I'm actually going to do is I'm just going to receive. I could receive this on the barcode, but I'm just going to receive this back in. So again, just tick this. Obviously, you wouldn't be doing it this quick unless they're the best subcontractor in the world. But we'll put a reference in, and we're going to receive these items back in. And that's just Sage's standard service received form. But what it's done, which I think is quite clever as well, is so we've got visibility, as you can see there, of where we are with regards to what we've sent and what we've received. But as we dispatched it, it actually issued the components. So this particular item, and I could record any additional labor if there's anything else I need to do, but I can now just simply book this finished item in, and we can see the costing up there now as an action, and we'll come back to that shortly. But I can book my 50 in. I need to enter a batch number, because that's how we've got the stock item set. And so long as the system's happy, I'll put my use by date. Doesn't matter, 31st, that'll do. Not very good. That's just going to complete my works order. And we've got the concept of these pre-allocations. So because it knows that, well, in fact, for this one, all of the quantity is for the next level up, it's going to say, do you want to just automatically allocate as you book in?
Nice and simple. It's when you've got that pre-allocation going to sales orders and 15 other works orders, and it becomes incredibly useful to see where everything's going to go, how it's all joined up.
Yeah. Now, what I'm going to do at this stage is, and again, we'll come back and talk about some of the other tabs, but I'm actually going to just print off the route card. So this has gone down to production at the moment. So we're just going to start now. Again, I appreciate this isn't real time, but what we've actually created. So this is the shop floor data capture app, and that's an Android app, and I'm running it on an Android-based barcoding device from a company called JM Prime. So the idea here is, I mean, again, we've got clients where there's an Android tablet at each production area. We've got clients where they're kind of bolted to the wall either end, but you enter your PIN, or if you've got an NSC tag, or you could scan your barcode badge, but it recognizes who you are. It's going to allow that person just to log in. Now, I'm actually connected to the guest Wi-Fi. Running Sage, what you can see on the screen is in a server. I'm not sure where it is, so I'm not in the same area as that. So this is working via a web API, a secure web API across the internet. So at this stage, if I've got my route card, I can just scan a barcode. And what I've done is I've actually just scanned this top barcode, which is going to show me the aerial view of the works order, all the different operations. And actually, if I'd allocated my components, I can issue them as well. So if you've allocated them all, I can say, yes, I'm using those and consuming that again, which is updating your works order. Alternatively, I'm going to scan this barcode here. That's going to take me straight to the works order. I could have tapped on the screen. I can see the details. I could see any notes. I'm just going to click on start. There's a machine run time as well, so I'm going to start both. And that's now started the clock, and I could log out. Now I'm just going to leave that running in the background just as we move across then into material planning. So let's just close all that off, and we'll come back to that shortly.
Worth mentioning on that app, that's when I was talking about the media earlier. So if you've got any instructions on there for somebody doing a particular operation, it can pop up on the screen there and give them a PDF image or take them to a website or show them a video for what it is they're actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So now I'm going to run MRP and or material planning. Now, the first thing to note is I don't have to kick anybody out of Sage. I can run this as many times as I want. What it will do each time you run it is it deletes the previous suggestion. Now, I've got, I don't know, probably 15 bombs, I think, in there, a few thousand stock items. And I think it's fair to say, Rich, we've worked really hard to optimize this, again, working with different customer data sets over the years.
Yeah, I think the longest one that we have at the moment, I mean, it is enormous because their forecasts are enormous. And what we do is we take a rather belt and braces approach and we explode everything. So every single demand for a built item gets exploded into a bomb in the background, so into a works order from the bomb in the background. So we're then we're going kind of for worst case scenario, because we've had any shortcut we tried to take in this process always ended up with missing something. So we've just taken the view that can't happen. So it's explode everything and then reverse back out for the things that we then find we don't need. So it does take a little longer, but so that was the current version. I think is 7 hours is the longest I know about. But there's an overnight scheduler you can use to run for that, so it's not really a problem. It should be ready for you in the morning when you come in. The new version of this that we're now working on, because we've found a couple of areas where we can speed it up. We should be able to at least half that, if not improve on that again for the next version that will come out in October. Yep. But for most people, it's much like you've just done there. You run it, and within 10 or 15 minutes, it's pretty much done. And that's,
or in my case, less than a minute. So, you know, and that's, again, we wanted to run it live. You know, it's always a bit of a risk, but the first screen that you see are warnings. And so what we can see, for example, this works order's overdue. So that should have actually been completed yesterday. We've got a works order may not be built in time, purchase orders overdue. So it's just presenting that information, even down to suggested purchase orders or even suggested works orders may not be arrive in time or may not be built in time. And what you can do is you can actually double click on these screens, and it opens up our future stock movements, so giving you clear visibility of your opening free stock. So we ignore anything that's allocated because we're only interested in, you know, you've already ring fenced that, we're only interested in the opening free stock, and it's always going to be looking to get you back to that minimum level. So in this case, we make to order or we buy to order for this particular item. But
minimum or maximum. Minimum or maximum. So yeah, you got a number of options in there. Some of you might be working on reorder levels as your trigger points. Again, you can use that as the trigger point. So you can top up to the maximum, and at the point of the reorder, you can generate the demand. So you're not constantly trying to keep it at a minimum level. So several ways that you can work. But that screen, the idea with that screen is a running balance for everything that is still going to happen. As it says, future stock movements. It's not history. This is all things that are outstanding. So works orders that still need to be built, whether they're coming in, they'll show as demand coming into here, and where it's a component like this and it's going out, you can see the in and outs on there, and the running balance is based on the date when those transactions happen. Obviously, we try our very hardest to stop it ever going negative. That's where we're generating the suggested purchase orders.
Yep. So if I just close that, we can go through some of the other tabs. I particularly like this one, so just giving you visibility of any traceability. If that changes to red, if it's overdue. But then we've got the suggested works order tab, so we can see a couple of the suggestions here. And if we scroll to the right-hand side, we can see the reasons why. So I just double-click, again opens up that future stock movements. Part of that, there's my manual sales forecast that I added in earlier. which we talked about. And again, we can start to see the demand for sales orders for what it would need to create.
And it's always about visibility. I mean, there, Steve, do you want to just drill down onto the sales order, for example? So the whole purpose of this future stock movements is to answer that question of, if it gives you a suggestion that says you need to buy this or you need to make this, then really you need to understand why. So and you know, I'd worked on some systems historically that just didn't give you that easily. It took a lot of work to understand the reasons. So we've worked really hard to give you drill down upon drill down to give you that information so you can understand exactly why those suggestions are happening. Because when you can see there's a forecast sales order in there, it may make you stop at that point and just question, well, is that actually going to happen? Now you can go away and just get someone just to confirm before you make any buying decisions that are really based on that.
And again, double clicking brings you through to that forecast, and you can import that as well. I particularly like this, being able to drill down and make amendments to the stock item. Now you'd have to rerun, but it's, again, perhaps the lead time's wrong if you've got permission.
Yes. Exactly. You're doing this analysis, you're looking at stock item, you've got a suggestion, you go, hang on a second, my min and max are set completely wrong. So if you've got permissions to amend, we allow you to do that amendment there. As Steve says, you would need to rerun the MRP to take that into account, but at least the changes are quick and easy to make on the fly.
And you can select the ones that you want and then just click on create works orders. So, you know, it's as simple as that. That then creates the works orders. What we've also got then are the suggested purchase orders to buy them into stock, but based on the sales order fulfillment. So perhaps for customers who also distribute anything where you're on the sales order, you fulfill direct from the supplier, we actually separate those out as well. So just to give you that visibility. So from here, we can see the stock items. Now, this for me is always the key column here. So when should we place the PO based on the lead time and therefore the requested date to get these items in just in time? So for example, with this one, it's a 90-day lead time. So the system's saying, look, place it today because we need it in, one would assume, for the 22nd of September, try to get it the day before. So we also show all the stock item details, the quantity, which you can override as well, which warehouse. Again, I like things like this, being able to pick an alternate supplier. So there might be somebody that you wouldn't normally purchase from, but it's an emergency. So being able to select them, using the currencies that you've got set up, some logic to try and work out the buying price. So if you've got list price, it would use that. If not, there's an open PO, it would use that price down to your average prices as well. And then again, you've got your reasons. So, you know, just double click. Just
without having to drill in, you have to get some visibility around what that is without having to open it up every time.
An example
so
here,
it might just be for minimum stock.
Yeah, and then we can see some usage. So the system's suggesting we order 2 to bring us back to that minimum. Now what I can do is, for the ones that I want to order today, I'm just going to select those ones there, click on create purchase orders, and it brings us to this summary screen. Now, where they're from the same supplier for the same delivery address, it will group them onto the same PO, but I can select all. Now I'm actually going to leave that unchecked for a moment. So I've got pre-allocation switched on, but I could accept them. But if I click on create, what it's now doing is say, okay, there's 350 that it's ordering, but we need 50.1 for these works orders. So when I click on save there, it's going to say, actually, the rest of it's going to go into free stock. So of course you would just accept that. But again, it's just showing you behind the scene, we're pre-allocating. So as we go to receive, it's just going to automatically allocate those orders. So I'll just go through the last couple.
Normally you'd have that automated once you're happy with that kind of good. And the pre-allocation is an interesting one. Some people like to have that absolute firm pre-allocation between a purchase order and a works order, and it's fixed and it's ring fenced. So you book it in, it's allocated to the works order, and we're done. Other people where there's more, I don't know, let's call it dynamic requirements around the stock. It might be that, okay, we need to just order enough, but by the time that stock comes in, our works order landscape might look a little different and our allocation requirement might be a bit different. So MRP would always order enough, and then at the point when it comes in, you decide what you're going to allocate it to. So you can work in both ways.
Yeah. So the key bit here is actually, if we have a look now, there's our purchase orders sat there ready to be received. Now, I will go into capacity planning shortly, but I'm just going to actually jump across to barcoding just whilst I'm here. So again, I'm using the same device. What we have is it's an Android app that connects to Sage via our web API. There's a lot of other settings which we won't go through, but the idea is, as I said earlier, I'm doing this over our Wi-Fi, and there's the 2 POs at the bottom. So I've not had to synchronize; they've just instantly arrived. Now, in terms of the items on there, we can see there's some pre-allocations just by this particular icon here. And if I click on that, we can see those pre-allocations on there. So again, just giving the warehouse team visibility of that. And then as in terms of the items themselves, what have I got on there? I've got one of these. If there's a barcode, I can scan it if I want to. If there's a barcode on there, I'll scan that item and it doesn't exist. Again, there's logic in there. I can click on the pluses, or if I click in the center area, I can just type in the quantities that we require. So let's just do that. So again, we've tried to make it as flexible as possible, haven't we, Richard?
Just probably fill in that. And you notice this is a very different look and feel to the shop floor data capture app. And the reason for that being that this is being used by someone probably for a big part of the day. So we've kind of made it softer contrast, softer colors to use. We get really good adoption. People do like this. Rather than having it as a white screen that's bright all the time. So we flipped it around. With shop floor data capture, you tend to be up there, do a process, go away and leave it alone again. You're back to it just to complete something, and then you're off it again. So it looks different deliberately, I suppose is what I'm trying to say.
And the key bit there is, as Richard was talking, that's fully updated, and you can see received by Steve, who I've logged in terms of that. So it's just the key benefit here is your information is live straight away. Now, I'm just going to go back quickly, receive the other one. And then, so let's receive that, 350. Now with this particular item, because it's batch numbered, I can, I think I've got a batch. Yeah, I've got an example batch code, so I can scan if there's a batch code there. So I can add that in, and is it one batch or is it a single batch of 350? And what's the use by date? So let's just, what should we do in there? That's 18th of the 7th, 22, that'll do. So I can just enter the date. Now there is also this option ties into the Sicon documents where you could take photographs and it would store that as a document against the
capturing the delivery,
delivery note.
Yeah, so when the invoice comes to be processed, you can actually see not only has it been received, but you can see the delivery note if there's any queries on it as well.
So again, that's just an example there with the barcoding. Now, if we just quickly jump back, because I'm obviously conscious of time, a lot to show you guys, but last thing from a capacity planning perspective is just giving you visibility of what information we've got. So we've got a couple of different views. So based on your labor availability, machine availability at a top level, what have you got booked in, your demand? So, are you over capacity or under capacity? Giving
so
you
this is the rough cut view, isn't it? Sorry to cut over this. So what we're trying to do is to go right overall. Are you okay in terms of labour, in terms of machines, or are there some issues that you need to be aware of? So you can build in available hours for your labour teams, labour resources, and your machine resources. And then as the works orders are in there and the suggested works orders start to build up, it starts to fill up that capacity.
Yeah, you can actually even go into the operations themselves, and you can then assign them to an individual. So if I go down to, I think Steve Mance is my main man today. We should see something in there for Steve. Or did I not schedule it? I must have completed it, but you would see what you've scheduled in for the individuals if necessary. You've also then for these different views, ones such as, just sometimes for customers, it's just the old-fashioned list view. In terms of, sorry, that's the diary view. Sorry, I mean in terms of that being able to drag and move those around, but even down to just a list view of what have you got that you're working on this week and what's due next week.
Move them up and down and prioritize.
Move them up and down as well. So, so trying to give you as much visibility in terms of views for what you've got scheduled for the team. As you said, Richard said it. It is rough cut capacity. So it's looking at.
Well, we say it's rough cut.
Skill set.
But you can book right down to the minute if you need to. So we're getting down to individual team or person resource planning, and it's not only about the planning. It will actually tell you. You can just see at the bottom of the screen, maybe it's quite small, but it's telling us that we've actually got one of 7.5 hours booked at the moment in that particular day for that particular resource. So what we're able to do is actually give you a screen that tells you where all your overloads are. So as you've run the capacity planning, it'll show you that information nice and clearly, so you can go and investigate where the problems are, nice and easy. And also what we're then able to provide as well from the shop floor perspective is just a list of operations that people need to work on. So it's a planning tool and it's a processing screen, and we've not tried to use the same one because they're not always appropriate for both.
So if I'm done, I can multi-stop, I can pause, I can tell the system the quantity that I was making, and I literally cannot remember how many I was making, Richard. So what have we got? It's this particular one, isn't it? It's just 500, I think it is. So if I go back into here, I'm just going to say I've completed all 500. So if I just stop and pause that, and then I can move on to the next one. I could have paused and said I've done a certain number, but again, this is live. So if I just refresh, look at my operation, I've completed both operations there. If we look at the labor, you've got actually who's worked on it, and then the amount of cost based on their hourly rate. And if we drill down, it's filling a central timesheet, isn't it? You know, in terms of the hours.
Yeah, timesheets was one of those tricky things. So yeah, wherever again time is coming from, whether it's from projects, whether it's from our service system, whether it's coming from the WAP system, which is our web-based timesheets, whether it's coming from the manufacturing system, everything arrives onto that central timesheet together.
Yeah. So there was the pre-allocations. Because I pre-allocated, it's automatically allocated those. Now I could do this on the barcoding device. I could do this on the I could do it at a more holistic level. But all I'm going to do is just issue my my allocations. Oh, I've got enough stock of one of them. No, it looks like it should be fine. No, top one's
Yeah, right. You're
yeah, that's absolutely fine. So the final stage then is I can book. Now, if you have a look up here, in terms of the costs, that's rolling up all of the costs, and now we've got an issued cost for the component. So again, just giving us visibility. The work sort of summary.
That's based on the standards, whatever your standard Sage costing method is. So we're not trying to reinvent that. It's taking whatever has happened in the Sage transaction history.
And what you've got is you've got your original budget when we created it versus your actual. So again, you can track. If the customer is perhaps doing more of a proof of concept or prototype, what margin would you like? And it can then tell you based on the cost what you should sell it for. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to book the finished item in. We can track scrap both on a component level, but also a finished goods item area as well. Pick where we're going to book that into. We've got auto batch numbering selected, so that's automatically dropped that in for us. So if I just save, don't want to continue with the booking. Because I've got pre-allocations, that's now pre-allocated to our sales order. We can see the bookings. And I think what's quite nice here, Richard, is you can undo this process, can't you, up to a certain point?
You can, obviously, until the stock disappears. But yeah, you can, if there's a mistake for some reason, you can undo it, you can unissue it, you can allocate it, you can change some components, you can then redo the whole thing all over again. So it's pretty flexible.
So, and then if I have a quick look, that's now ready for dispatch. I haven't got to do anything because I've got the way my system's set up from a barcoding perspective. I've got a flag to say if it's fully allocated, just release it to the handheld. So that then comes out to the handheld, and we've got
5139.
5139, the one at the bottom. I could have searched for it, I could have filtered. So straight away on the handheld, we've got what items we have. It's automatically picked it for me, and I can then just dispatch.
Just confirming it. Yeah.
Confirm that. Oh, I've got to enter the correct quantities. Let's do 500 there. Got to pick the right batch. So again, think about this: you're scanning, but just make sure you're picking the right number of elements in there. Click OK. System's happy with that.
That might seem a little long-winded, but obviously when you're running batches, a lot of people have mixed batches of items going out. So it's important just to confirm those details.
You can switch on pallets. You can switch on more advanced boxes. I can enter different lengths.
Yeah, some couriers require more information for the courier labels, which you can also produce from the system as well.
And then the final bit, if I just refresh, that's now updated Sage, and that's ready for us to invoice. So again, not in the same vicinity. I'm doing this across the guest Wi-Fi. And then the final piece, and there's so much more we could go through. If I come back into my projects list, now I've not touched anything from a projects perspective because I didn't need to. But yeah, if we go 5139
somewhere.
There it is at the top there. There's my so if I look at the project inquiry, what we've ended up with is, now again, it's all down to settings depending on how it's going to present that information. But from a project perspective, because I created a project when I created the works order from the sales order, if I go to the revenues, there's my income from the system, and when I invoice, you've got the drill down as you saw there. If we go to stock, we can then see the cost of sale for those particular items. And then if we're looking for overall margin, because I've not yet done all the invoicing, that'll flush through. We'll then see what actual margin we've made on the particular order.
The works order is on the last tab in there as well, so that will show you a drill down of the works order that's attached if you want to see that, and sub assemblies and that type of stuff. So even though we're in a project environment, we can still get a full visibility of all the works orders that are associated with that particular project. And lastly, if you just go to that project management inquiry at the top,
Yep.
which I know you may not have looked at too much, but this, I mean, we've generated some of this for us internally. This is more about running your project. So you still got that summary for the costing, but this is about having project notes. So you can have categories of project notes, your objectives, and then there are lists of items for things that you intend to do on your project and when they need to be done by. So it's turning into a full project management system with tasks that can be assigned to individual users within the Sage environment as well.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the product, but just hopefully gives you an idea of what it looks like and some of the elements. Of course, every project's different, but we just wanted to give you an idea. Just from a hardware perspective, that's the device I was using. Now you can get a trigger grip for that as well. It's from a company called JM Prime, who've just been brilliant to work with. But
it looks like a phone, doesn't it? But it's actually a proper, robust device. In the top, there's a built-in barcode scanner. They're fantastic. As Steve says, there's a trigger grip to go with them. They make all sorts of different shaped devices, but that one, because some of them have the number, a little bit pointless, and they're a great device.
So this is the key part, though, isn't it? So you might be sat there thinking, this looks great. Obviously, need to drill down on, as we said, a one-to-one sort of demonstration. But do you want to talk us through what is a migration, but actually it's not a migration?
I think it's very important, isn't it? You know, you guys obviously all have Sage Manufacturing at the moment. You're thinking, well, is it going to be a big upheaval to get me from where I am at the moment onto Sicon Manufacturing? And the answer is no. Originally, we were going to migrate all the works orders across and bring all that data. But actually, what we managed to do, which I think is a much simpler approach for everybody, is that our MRP, material planning particularly, sits across both our works orders and all our demand, and also includes the Sage Manufacturing works orders. So really, at the point when you're transitioning across from one to the other, the chances are you may have fully allocated all of your works orders, possibly, and you may be doing everything new in Sicon one. But there's a possibility for some reason you might still need to be using the Sage one. So what we're doing is just picking up any shortages that are there or might occur during that production process. They just get included in that daily MRP run, just so we're double checking. So what that enables you to do is to carry on running the Sage Manufacturing works orders for as long as you need to be honest, whilst you are transitioning across to making full use of the Sicon module. So it takes a lot of the stress out of a transition. The two modules sit there quite happily side by side. So there's no problem with putting them both in there. And really, it's up to you. Run down the old Sage works orders, which is a point where you really need to. But if people are familiar with that, or you've got reports based on that, then obviously you can identify those and deal with it in a much more calm and controlled fashion. That's I guess what we've tried to make. That's as easy as possible. I don't think we could have made it any easier.
No. So again, every project's different, but from the commercials part, so it is a monthly subscription. So again, speak with your partners on that. But Sage, we've agreed with Sage for those customers who kind of want to get started by the end of the year, that you can get 20% off year one on the subscriptions.
So it's difficult talking about money, isn't it? But ultimately, what we're hoping we've been able to present is Sage Manufacturing is being end of life over the next few years. So there's time to move over. There's a bit of a deal at the minute, but really it isn't necessarily about that particular deal. It's about what can you get from our software? How is that going to help your business? How's it going to improve efficiency, give you more visibility, allow you to bring in things like barcoding, shop floor data capture, all those other bits and pieces that you can hopefully make use of, that will make it a good proposition. That's ultimately what we want you to be happy with our software. Hopefully you can tell we're fairly passionate about this stuff. It has to work. These are my little inventions, my little babies, if you like, that I've created over quite a lot of years. And it's important to me that we see them out there and doing their job, and people actually being successful with them. So hopefully that's come across. Yes, there's a cost to it, but hopefully the benefits far outweigh those costs. Yeah. We've given you a bit of an indication there as to what an implementation might take. It really depends on the type of business and the complexities you have. but it's not an unreasonable amount of time. And I think what a lot of people have done, Steve, in this process, is gone back to having a look at their raw data. You talked right at the beginning about the quality of that data, the lead times, the min-max stock levels, all of those things are really important. And quite often we find in the projects that data just needs a refresh, bringing up to date to really make it work very well. So there's a bit of effort required on the part of the clients as well.
Yeah. So we said we save this to the end. So Richard, who are Sicon?
Who are Sicon? Well, we are a business systems software developer based in Bury St Edmunds in Suffolk. A lovely little place in case anybody hasn't been here. So we've got an office here, which is the top picture. We've just recently bought the bottom picture office, which is actually next door to us. So we're occupying the top floor of that at the moment. So we've done that in the last 2 months. So a lot of people are obviously trying to shrink down their offices or get rid of them, and we've done the opposite. We've increased, and there is a satellite office up in Newcastle as well with a group of people up there, and that's expanding. So we're now just over 60 people, but 20 of those people have actually joined us, pretty much 20 of them, in the last year since all the COVID stuff and lockdown happened. So that's kind of interesting. Your next point there about the only Sage 200. Yeah, we do not write software to integrate with any other platform. We're not interested in Access Accounts, Iris, Exchequer, Microsoft, nothing. We are entirely Sage focused. And a lot of people, if you're looking at that commercially, that's kind of a big decision to make. Most people are trying to write software that runs across everything. But I think what we bring to the table is something that's very integrated. We understand how Sage works extremely well. We used to be a Sage business partner selling the product. So yeah. I think that also gives us some extra knowledge about what we're doing.
And I think that kind of brings us nicely on to, I suppose, why Sage 200? What is it about Sage 200 that's kept those fires burning for you for all these years?
It's funny, isn't it? Sage 200 has almost been, well, I wouldn't say ignored a little bit by Sage, but it's sort of sat there, but ultimately it is the best product we think in their whole portfolio, because it's a desktop product at the moment. Fair enough. It's going web. If anyone didn't know it, if you look at the Sage 200 standard, it's already got web forms in it, and they are going to come into the desktop version, the on-premise version that you guys have over the next couple of years. It's Microsoft SQL based. Now that does mean that really there is no limit to the data. If things are running slow, then generally it's a coding problem. Right? There are some things that just take a long time to process, but really SQL Server is going to give it a platform that makes it incredibly scalable. We talked about the amendability. You've seen all the fields that we have and the tabs that we have and the modules that we built. That's what Sage 200 gives us as a developer, and the ability to make it deliver functionality to customers. And we will continue to do that in that platform. There's obviously a well-established partner network out there, which is important. SageWorks keeping that stuff up to date in terms of legislation, HMRC. It's reliable. It's a trusted brand. Now, some people will say, well, how come Sage are not doing the stuff that we're doing? That's something we get asked a lot, isn't it, Steve? And it is, yeah. My answer is always, well, Sage's problem is there's no way they can be as agile as us. It just would not be practical. The benefit is, if one of you guys decides to go ahead with the project and you come across something the way your business process works that it doesn't really cope with, then we're here, we're all ears, and we'll listen to that, and we will do our utmost to make a change to the product where we can to accommodate what you need. And Sage, it's like a big oil tanker, isn't it? It takes a long time to go off a different course, and they don't really do those verticals particularly well. Because there's a lot of knowledge. We live and breathe manufacturing, have done for many years. So I think it puts us in a good position to understand what people are asking for and make those decisions.
And I think for me it's Sage's ISV community. So we're one of a number. It is so tightly knit. We can't survive without Sage. And Sage 200 needs the ISV. So for me, it's the perfect relationship.
Yep. Now the last point on that, is it cloud? It's worth covering, isn't it? Because we're telling these guys on the call that we're going to have to they have to move across onto another manufacturing platform, and some of them are going to go, well, while I'm doing that, I'm going to have a look. There's other products out there, and Sage 200 isn't a cloud product. And you're right, it isn't a true cloud product. It's cloud connected, which means there's an API to the web, so you can access data from the web. With the web forms coming, you will be able to take your servers or have them hosted somewhere else, and it becomes as good a cloud platform as anything. And it's actually, when you look at some of the other products on the market, typically Sage 200 Standard is a true cloud product. It sits in its environment, it's multi-tenanted, it's upgraded by the vendor, etc., etc. The important difference is with you look at other clients, when you outgrow that, when you need bespoke, when you need access to your data, when you need customization, what typically happens with any other vendor is you end up on your own server, funnily enough. So it's almost like everyone who's in our Sage 200 community has already outgrown the bog standard generic products. Some of you would have moved from Sage 50 to Sage 200, and because you want that flexible, more powerful environment. So I think it's an interesting point that other competitors will obviously go on about a lot, but as far as I'm concerned, it makes no difference. It's still a very good platform. It's easy to access from the web with the right configuration.
And then, yeah, I brought this slide up slightly early, but I think it does tie in quite nicely. There is, it's that ecosystem. Obviously we focused on the core manufacturing, but again, Sage 200 really does start to become your ERP. Again, we've listed some of the other add-ons, which again tie in fully integrated into that. So it's with these sort of products, or projects, which really you're looking at, it's about that bigger picture. In Sage 200, I think with the growth and the what Sage have put into it over the last few years, the ISV community and the portfolio of products, especially from us, obviously that's what we're going to focus on. Really does help offer that value product. Now I'm conscious of time, Rich, and I'm just wondering, Maria, are there any questions?
There are, but we're at the top of the hour now, so I think what we'll do is respond to them on email. So we'll there'll be a link to the recording sent out this afternoon, and then we'll address any of the questions directly on email.
Perfect.
Well, sorry for everybody. Hopefully that was interesting. As I said, we sometimes get a little carried away and a little overly passionate about these things, but we've given you a live demonstration of what the product looks like, how that works. Hopefully that's really helpful, especially with some of the app interfaces in there as well. So yeah, thanks very, very much for your time. Thanks for attending, and we'll get back to you with the answers on the questions.
Perfect. So thanks very much, everybody. And I think, Richard, it's politically correct these days to say stay safe.
Indeed. Thanks again. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.